Hey everybody, I'm Alan with Bricks and Blocks Gaming, and this video is my review of the Bold Endeavour supplement for Stargrave, the sci-fi miniature skirmish game, written by Josephine McCullough, with artwork from Helge C. Balzer, which I'll be showing some of, published by Osprey Games and released in October of 2023. Osprey was going to send me a copy of this when it released, but I was moving at the time and it must have got lost in the mail. So I did buy my copy myself as well as the Kindle copy. The main focus of Bold Endeavour is to make your ship a bigger part of the story by giving it some stats, assigning different crew members to different roles and positions on the ship, and to create some encounters that happen between battles. And these can provide the team with both benefits and penalties, and add to the overall narrative you and your playgroup are creating in your campaign. These are optional rules that add both fun, but a bit of extra bookkeeping and time to implement. The supplement also contains 2 new backgrounds, a few new powers, 5 new soldiers, 2 new loot tables, some new ship upgrades, some strange new monsters, and 5 scenarios, one of which is for solo play. The first thing in the book past the table of contents is a captain's log, which basically narrates what one of the new between-game sections could look like, explaining what the crew has been doing to get them through space based on the different roles the crewmen play while they aren't battling it out in a gunfight. After that, the author gives some background into how he came up with the new ideas for the supplement and how his initial vision for the book kind of evolved as he wrote. These are always fun to read, as it makes it feel like Joe McCullough has just sat down with us for a chat or interview as he explains his thought processes and connects with his gaming community. The new rules in the book regarding spaceships and travel are called Advanced Astrogation. And with this, the book includes a new spaceship sheet, which can also be downloaded on Osprey Games' website. This allows you to track damage and upgrades your ship gets, and gives space for assigning crew members to the various ship tasks of pilot, gunner, navigations officer, engineer, science officer, and the ship doctor. Each of these 6 positions will need to be filled by 1 crew member, with each leader or soldier able to assume 1 role. One thing I appreciate about Stargrave over its fantasy wizard-themed brother Frostgrave is how Stargrave finds multiple ways to make use of figures' will stats. In this case, will determines a character's skill at the various ship tasks. However, there's additional things that can also affect this as the crew spends time traveling the galaxy. And there's also rules for allowing captains and first mates to use their level up to improve their crew skills, instead of their normal improvements to stats and powers. Once the spaceship sheet is filled out and all the tasks are assigned, players are ready to add space encounters to their campaign. They start by rolling on a corresponding table to see if and when a special event will happen. If an event will occur, players will be instructed to roll either before or after the battle on a subsequent table to determine what the event will be. Each result provides some flavor text, then instructs your crew to make some ship skills tests, essentially a target number you roll against using the proper crewmate's ship skill. So you might be called on to use your pilot skill to fly through an asteroid field, your science skill to investigate some strange material you found, or your choice between your gunnery skill or your navigation skill in a fight or flight scenario. Sometimes, success means the crew has found loot, gained experience points, or simply doesn't face any negative consequences, while failure usually results in damage to the ship. The ship starts with a structural integrity of 1,000 points, and every 50 damage it takes triggers a critical hit, which can cause injuries to crewmates or damage to supplies on the ship, or cause quirks or system damage, both of which usually hinder the crew's ship skills. And if the ship ever reaches 0 for its structural integrity, the ship blows up, killing the crew in the process. But luckily, the ship's onboard engineer can potentially do some free repairs after each battle, and the crew can spend credits to do additional repairs as well. Another optional rule presented in this book is the opportunity to call in an emergency evacuation. However, this will take 1 to 4 turns for the landing. This rule is recommended to be scenario specific, as it requires planned space on the tabletop for the ship to land, and for the players to have a model ship to actually land on the table. The landed ship essentially creates a new escape point for its crew. Also, the ship can activate, either firing its defense cannons or taking off, which might be necessary as enemies are allowed to shoot at it and damage the ship while it's landed. As mentioned earlier, this book contains 5 new scenarios, one of which is a solo mission, and these battles are independent from each other and are designed to be slotted into any campaign, as opposed to being a mini campaign of their own. Of note, none of the head-to-head battles require you to use the Astrogation rules. However, the solo battle does a little. There are a few new enemies in this book, but most of them sound so unique in their descriptions that I'm not going to try to explain them here. In fact, I think some of them will probably be up for interpretation by each playgroup. The first scenario takes place in a cave on an ice planet and has some special rules for missed shots to potentially bounce around off the walls. I think this is pretty cool and would actually be fun as an optional rule to use in other scenarios that take place in confined, possibly reflective areas. And if your campaign is taking your team underground or in an otherwise snowy area, this could be a good battle to include. The next scenario happens in the ruins of an abandoned laboratory. It involves a pool of floating containment cylinders that can get shot open to reveal a variety of different creatures that can be released. This would be a fun scenario to add to a campaign that's already taken the crews to a research or science facility. The third scenario is really interesting, as it attempts to simulate a 3-dimensional zero-gravity battlefield. It requires the use of 3 and 6-inch stands that figures and loot will be on to represent them being able to float around. It also contains multiple 4-inch diameter spheres that can also be held up on the stands, that will be moving about during the battle. I really like the mechanic the author uses to represent this 3-dimensional space, but if you plan to play this, make sure you have a good way to make stable stands that will support your figures. Lego figures and stands would work pretty well for this, as they can click together and support themselves easily. You'll also want a stable table that won't shake if players bump into it, as it could easily cause floating figures to suddenly feel the effects of gravity kicking in. This scenario or its game mechanics could be a lot of fun, especially to represent a battle on a derelict space station or something. The final head-to-head scenario takes place in a densely packed forest of trees that are hundreds of feet tall, so you'll need lots of trees and jungle terrain. During the battle, waves of mulch and minor plant life will essentially be moving in waves that essentially work like a horizontal landslide that can move figures and loot around, and contains some weird bird creatures that interlock together to essentially form single larger creatures. This battle could work well in any campaign venturing into a forest. The fifth scenario is the solo battle and is set up as though strange creatures have attached themselves to the ship, and most of the crew is heading out into space to remove them. 2 members, the pilot and engineer if using the astrogation rules, stay behind to keep the ship going. There's some special rules for being in space with a spacesuit, and there's a chance that loot left by the defeated plasmonic life forms that have attached themselves to the ship can drift off into space. This would definitely be a fun battle to add if using the astrogation rules, but would be easy to modify if not. Now for my favorite part about supplements, new ways to build your team. I won't be giving away all of the rules here because I want to encourage players to actually go out and buy the book for themselves to support the author and the publisher so they keep making these books. To go along with the new astrogation rules, 3 of the new soldiers are designed for players using these options. The apprentice and expert are basically the standard and specialist equivalent of each other, and both have the area of knowledge trait. When hired, you choose one of the 6 ship skills. The apprentice gains an additional +2 on checks for that skill, while the Expert gains +4. Also, the Expert stats are a little better. While the captains and first mates are in charge of the crew, the Quartermaster is kind of in charge of the ship and makes sure everything is running smoothly. And he's also a jack of all trades, knowing how to deal with a number of situations. As such, he's formidable in combat, gives the crew a +1 bonus to all engineering rolls, even if he's not the ship's engineer, and gains bonuses to unlock any kind of loot. And surprisingly, he counts as a standard soldier. Next is the Exosuit, which works kind of like an armored trooper. It's basically a guy in a power loader from Aliens. It's slow, but provides extra armor and hand-to-hand combat ability, but it also can break into physical loot better than a case cracker and isn't encumbered while hauling it. However, it does have a 20 credit upkeep to pay to bring it into battle. But if you don't pay that, you can bring the driver by himself, and he has decent stats. In fact, he can even climb out of the suit on the battlefield if the player so chooses. Lastly is the Comtech. These specialist soldiers are okay with their combat, but their real strength is in their communication equipment, which allows them to always activate as if they're near to their captain and first mate. So if they haven't already activated on a turn, they can be one of the 3 soldiers that activate with their leaders, or they can choose to wait until the soldier phase. This gives them lots of versatility to fire at unexpected times or to grab some loot and run before the soldier phase. And their technology know-how gives them a bonus to unlocking data loot as well as a bonus to any ship skill that they're assigned to. For backgrounds, Bold Endeavour adds the Time Walker, a character whose abilities focus on manipulating time to essentially predict and plan for future events on the battlefield. And Paladins, who are from a mysterious order of knights. As such, they favor combat armor and close combat, gain bonuses with shields, but they have to pay 10% of their credits back to their order or to charity, and only captains, not first mates, can choose this background. To support these new backgrounds, the supplement has 6 powers not found in the core book, though Contacts, Probability Curve, and Saving Grace have been released in other supplements. The all-new powers are Bounce Back, which prevents a figure from being moved involuntarily, Righteous Fury, which improves both the fight and increases damage in melee combat, and can be used on the activator or another ally, and Thunderstrike, which causes bonus damage the next time the activator damages a target. For new loot, there's an alien artifact table that contains 20 items that each boost specific powers. And while I think these kinds of items are cool, most of these that I've rolled up from other loot tables have given me items for powers I don't have or don't plan to get, so rolling on the table can be a bit underwhelming sometimes. There's also a new advanced technology table, with most of the items being things that anyone in the crew can use, but 6 of them are actually left in your cargo hold and serve as ship upgrades. And speaking of ship upgrades, there are 11 new purchasable upgrades, all of which focus on Astrogation. As far as my opinions about this supplement, having recently finished a campaign playing through the sci-fi skirmish game 5 Parsecs from Home, which is half focused on battles and half focused on what the crew does between battles, I really like the additions that Bold Endeavour adds to the story about the adventures the crew is going on, and helps give importance to the no-name soldiers that are hired by the stars of the team. The additional complexity the supplement adds to the rules is minimal and won't take a lot of time to use during a play session. And I know I will be using the Astrogation rules should I find time to play another campaign of Stargrave. For soldiers, I really like the new Quartermaster and Comtech regardless of whether the Astrogation rules are used. They both provide general utility that would be fun to bring to the table. For new ways to build your leaders, Paladins are cool in any game, and Righteous Fury stands out as a strong new power, especially if combined with the Inspiring power from the Quarantine 37 supplement, which also boosts fight. I mentioned earlier the missed shots table from the first scenario isn't actually an optional rule for players, but it would be fun to incorporate into a few battles. And while the new scenarios don't make up an actual campaign, having some options for a few different battles, especially a solo battle, is great. All in all, I think this is a must-have supplement for Stargrave players that want to add a little more depth to their story and their crew, and it's a solid purchase even if you don't want to use the Astrogation rules, as there's lots of great content in this book. Leave me a comment with your thoughts about the Bold Endeavour supplement, and be sure to check out some of the other Stargrave content here on Bricks and Blocks Gaming. I'm Alan, thanks for watching, and play well.